If this was known about before playoffs or at the beginning of playoffs or during the whole split, or he was having symptoms earlier, then this puts a whole new light on that emergency sub situation for Evil Geniuses. Because wait a minute, why didn't you register an ADC sub for the playoffs, knowing that this situation was unraveling behind the scenes, that it was starting to become a problem, there was warning signs being seen, you're getting told by coaching staff, you're hearing from other teammates who don't want to play with them, maybe we should... Why wasn't there an emergency ADC sub registered? Why was this coach guy who's a fucking jungler still registered as a sub? Exactly. Why wait so long? Because it only makes sense, the emergency sub, if you really did right at, like, let's say a minimum before the TSM series, if not the TL one. You just, like, literally, you cannot play under any circumstances, and like, we just got to have someone now, and obviously a jungle can't play ADC. No, it was presented like that, but it doesn't seem like it was. And that makes it seem, quite frankly, like Riot themselves, the LCS, made a corrupt decision, which was something I wondered about and speculated about in that video. It seems like they had no business making this decision, and it wasn't a good faith decision because the information wasn't given to them, seemingly in good faith. More was known, even though they pretended like this just came out of nowhere. No one could understand. Hence, emergency, because that's not the way the sub rules work. You don't even have to make your emergency subs, by the way, until the playoffs have been set. So even during the whole split, you could have had these issues and then said, right, well, for the playoffs, obviously he's going through something, so let's register a sub just in case anyway. And by the way, the Cowrie guy was already in their academy team, as far as I know, who is the person in it. So they even could have done it. They just chose not to. They chose, and this is a key detail, they chose not to register Cowrie as one of their subs for the playoffs. So that also implies, by the way, think about what I said earlier. Remember how I said it was implied to me by someone within EG that maybe they weren't even just going to let him have the game against TL off, qualify to Worlds, and then let him play that rather, qualify to Worlds and have the rest of the time off. Maybe they were going to try and make him play in Chicago. Well, if you don't have an emergency sub, he's going to have to play, right? That's essentially what they were able to put before Riot's feet, it seems like. So already in itself, that in itself seems so dirty. Now, competitive integrity is a word I love, so I'm going to bring it up here. It's a big word, by the way. Let me just make something clear. I always say this when people complain about bad rules. There's rules I don't like. I would never ask for them to be changed in the moment. You know why? Because rules cannot be changed during a tournament. It is absurd. You could play earlier matches with certain rules, change the rules, and then play different ones. For a start, if anyone eliminated, what the hell? You can do that. Why couldn't I? That's absurd. You've ruined the competitive entirely of this split. Now, if EG loses, in theory, you might not have totally, but you opened the door for it. And by the way, Lord forbid somehow EG like wins this split and the Cowrie guy is the reason why carries and they're like not because if that happens, oh, I think this is a blight. This is a black mark on the LCS, the commissioners and the rule sets and Riot, quite frankly. It feels to me like they cheated the LCS if anything like that happens. And I will say, by the way, I actually do think this is a thing that needs to be said. Just feeling sorry for the person ain't enough to be able to change rules and break competitive integrity. I'm sorry. I don't care what happened. That does not mean that you can just go, well, I'm a good person, TM, and anyone saying otherwise is bad. No, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. And that sounds like some really weird deflecting behaviour, doesn't it? This also, and this is a key thing, it's not that they have done the cheating, or they necessarily are in the case of EG, but it sets a precedent that opens a loophole where people could cheat. Because it sets a precedent that anyone can use mental health. Just say the words mental health, and then I don't know how they evaluate it. The problem is we don't know. They don't even tell us that, like what they did. So as a result, we don't even really know what you have to do. Is this like when you used to go in California and get a weed license, and they wanted to give you it because it cost money anyway, and the doctor was pro-weed. So if you said anything, oh, I feel anxious. Oh, well, I've got something for that. I'm having trouble sleeping. Yeah, I bet. Oh, my joints hurt. Yeah, I've got something for that. Ah. I haven't got any joints. Yeah, I can get you some of that. You get the point. Like, they were just going to give you it, weren't they, on almost any reasons. I'm worried this could be a similar case. What's going on here?
Is because most of these teams anyway, people aren't going to invest millions and have influence or controlling stakes in teams and then just go, oh, what? I'm not allowed to do that, right? Well, I guess I'll just sell it for whatever it costs right now, or I'll sell it off immediately. And even though I made a massive investment, I might have to sell it for less, or I might have to sell it now when the whole point of investing was for more, and I've already done things with that org. No, what will happen most likely is they will just get a third-party entity to take over ownership. Now, yes, they won't be able to have a contract that has a buyback clause or the first opportunity to buy the team, etc. But they can just have their cousin is the guy who is in name owns the team. Someone like their wife potentially. Like, there's a lot of options here that people can understand how you can get around this and still technically own the two teams, but not in the same direct way which Riot's trying to prohibit. Now, there's not a lot Riot can really do about that, so I wouldn't blame them in this particular section. But for those wondering why it's significant that you could have any kind of ownership stake in two teams, and why is this a conflict of interest? Why is it a big deal? Think about this. When you own two teams or more in the league, you can now engage, as I highlighted before and alluded to with some of the teams, if they'd had an EULCS or an NALCS or two NALCS teams, you can engage in behavior which then compromises the competitive integrity of the league. In other words, results won't be legitimate or independent of factors outside the game. They won't just be You won't be able to look at a result and go, right, that result happened because the two teams played, one was better, one had a certain strategy or certain skills or certain plays, and that's why they won the game, and that's all I need to know. You'll always have to wonder, oh, but wait a minute, doesn't that guy have an interest or some sort of influence over the other team that just lost the game? All sorts of problems that Riot is actively allowing with their hypocrisy. This is outrageous. Why is there one set of rules for the wealthy and the famous coming from the traditional sports world, and why is there another set of rules for all the past seasons of League of Legends for the endemic esports orgs? Why were they not allowed a cooling off period or allowed to not be punished and allowed to own multiple teams and have direct conflict of interest and compete against themselves and potentially engage in non-competitive behavior, which is against the spirit of the league and competition itself? Why was there a different set of application of the rules in the past and a totally new set of application of rules now that goes against what was even last split's rule set? So Riot has thrown the integrity of their league out of the window purely to usher in what they see as the big dogs, the saviors of esports, these big outside investment firms and traditional sports franchises that they want to be partnered with. And so they were willing to partner with these teams to ignore their own rules, their own protocol and process for how those rules were applied, where once you find out, you must immediately divest, you are possibly going to be punished. You could even be banned in the case of Renegades and Monte Cristo, or you're just directly prohibited. You may not own a team in the ULCS and the NALCS. You may not own two NALCS teams. So all these business opportunities that could have been in the past where people would have exploited a 12-month window and all these other elements and other certain things that could go on, egregious behavior that should not be allowed and might not be illegal in terms of the laws of the land, but in terms of Riot's laws would be illegal, or rather just would be not allowed by the rules, but you might be able to get away with if you had this cooling down period. Riot's thrown all that out and taken the competitive integrity of the league and, in fact, the application process for their permanent partnership process, the franchising concept, and seemingly just ignored it at a whim to usher in these big rich guys. Now, by the way, just as an aside, what is everyone who just works at Riot? The second you walk through Riot, is it like going into the fucking Nebuchadnezzar in the Matrix when Neo comes out, and then you can just jack in and they just like download shit to your brain and you instantly are an expert on any topic you want to be on? Like fucking Mark Merrill, apparently some sort of mad expert on like finances, economics, like growing businesses that he's never been involved in. And then fucking game balancing, all these things. And then this other guy comes in as well. I mean, Magus is apparently an expert on like advertising, running sports leagues, expanding sports leagues around the world, even very specific ones in niches that have never existed before. Are these guys just all experts on like 7 fields at once just because they work in one area and aren't necessarily even killing it like 10 out of 10, A-star, 5 stars out of 5, best in that field that they're in right there, but they're just experts on every field. They're experts on everyone else's job as well. Unbelievable, isn't it? You've got to consider, this isn't the first time we've seen this. I mean, this type of thinking, the idea that the players themselves in any context and someone else's YouTube channel not owned by Riot is actually like the LCS platform. This is the sort of mentality, the worldview from which that infamous super bullshit clause came that was going to be in the contracts. I think it was at the end of season 3 where it was going to say that the LCS players weren't allowed to stream themselves playing other games when they were at home in their own houses. They weren't allowed to play like CSGO, Dota, whatever other game. They weren't allowed to play that on stream if they were an LCS player. That was going to happen. That was going to happen. That's why it was leaked. That's why people like On Gamers broke the story and got it out there, and people did the hard yards to make the case that it was going to happen, and then Riot pretended like they weren't going to do it. Oh, we never were really going to do it. Actually, you know what? Ironically, we'd already removed it ourselves before that came to our like all this sort of obvious lying to your face about this shit. I'm just trying to tell you one thing, do another, and then when you get caught up, I was never trying to do that. Why would I do something like that? I'd think whatever you want me to think. Deal. Like, just utterly, like, lack of respect even for the audience and the intelligence of the people they're speaking to when they do so. But we've seen this worldview again and again. So again, Riot thinks their jurisdiction extends to all of real life. They think they own these players in some crazy sense. Not just in a partnership with them, not just do those players work under their brand at certain points. They have just ownership over these people. And ironically, remember, it was Mark Merrill talking about the concept of he doesn't want to live in a world where people are profiting off the image rights of Pobelter and then in taking that money and investing it elsewhere. And yet Riot wants to be the only ones, to some degree, in certain contexts, who can profit from certain image rights. They always have to get their cut, essentially. Unless they're getting their cut, you can't profit off those image rights in other contexts, particularly. Essentially, what this guy's doing, Mark Merrill, Tryndamere, is doing, is lecturing people who are experts at selling the one quantity they have any control over, which is the exposure. They've maxed that out. They've sold it for the max amount. They've done a fantastic job at it. He's telling those people how to do their own job, and even suggesting to them, I know you've maxed it out in that way, but why don't you just take your profits and then invest them into the game even though, if I understood this concept of how they've maxed it out, I'd understood that putting more money in won't increase the amount of exposure, won't increase the sponsorship money coming in. It'll just mean you're paying above the odds for the players. And therefore, essentially my suggestion to you, Reginald, is why don't you just spend your own money and then not have any way to make it back? Because I'm not going to do anything that will increase your potential exposure, like put you on television or get you sponsorship deals over here or rev share in some other way on the success of everyone in the league or some sort of arena events. Let's not do any of those things that would increase the potential for you to make money and the exposure you can sell. Let's not do any of that. You just take some of the money you've made and for no reason put it into the game. And also, why are you telling me, the one person who could change everything, and Riot as an entity we're talking about, that I should do it? Why don't you do it? Well, I think I've just explained for you why he doesn't there, Tryndamere. It's a pretty simple concept when you really think about what the business is here. So first and foremost, what business of Riot's is it what Reginald does with his profits, with the money that he generates? I mean, he can spend it where he likes, on whatever he likes, by the way. It's absolutely no business of Riot's whatsoever. Now, what's funny is someone's going to say, but what business of Reginald's is it? Get the inhaler. Mum, can I have more Mountain Dew? Back to the... And what business of it is, as someone who's a 14-year-old who, in my own mind, could probably get a degree in law, therefore I am a lawyer, what business of it is it, of Reginald's, what Riot is doing... with their money? Got you. You didn't get them in anywhere. The whole point is, it's actually not the same scenario for Riot when you reverse the positions whatsoever, because he's calling for Riot to improve their conditions. So prize money, stipends, sponsorship opportunities, potential rev share, things that Reginald can't do any of those things, by the way. And remember, Riot portray themselves as caring about all these things, caring about teams, caring about the ecosystem. They're constantly using terms, ecosystem, parity, all this stuff. And yet they're the ones who, in not setting up some of these things and not exploiting their own industry and creating these mechanisms for making wealth for the teams and just sitting back, skimming all the money off the top through their casual game and putting these tiny little chicken bones, throwing a mere morsel to the esports every now and then just to keep it ticking over to be a nice little cheap advertisement for their massive game. In this, relative to the other esports games, if you look how much is in the other ones, now as a result, Riot claim to be this benevolent benefactor of the scene who cares about it, and they're the ones who could do more and aren't doing more. Reginald doesn't claim to be any of those things, as far as I know. I'd probably says he cares about his players and does the best on it, etc. But he does. Ultimately, the reason he can pay them is because he's done a fantastic job with his business and the people who help him with his business. They created a lot of money and they've maximised their brand. Therefore, they can pay top dollar. But they're now in the situation where there's not a lot more they can do to put more money in. The whole point is they aren't in a situation where they're hypocritical for not doing more. Giving someone 10 days to sell an LCS spot is ridiculous. I mean, this is an example where not only do they have 10 days to sell it, but you've just told the whole world, this guy only has 10 days to sell something. Now, everyone who now might negotiate with that person, if they're smart, sure, LCS spots are still clamoured over. People want LCS spots. They'll likely still get a lot of money. There will be competition even bidding for it. But it's quite possible that all the bidders in general, after hearing this information, could bid less. And they might be bid up a bit, but in theory, they could all try and play this card of, well, I know you kind of have to sell and you're a bit desperate. In that scenario, you've given leverage to the people who are doing the buying, whereas the person who's selling usually should have the leverage of having something that's wanted and always having the option to go, I won't accept your offer or any offer, therefore the offer better be good and better be compelling to me. That's taken away from them in this scenario. And this is also where in the future, as teams are being sold for millions now, and the money you can make is a lot in esports, I feel like in the future, this is where Riot just coming out and being the judge, jury, and executioner and handing out these issues and making you do this, this is where in the future I think they will get taken to court. That's what I would speculate. Because in the future, if it costs 10 million to buy a team, and then I do something that you, and only in Riot's rules, not in the law of the land, is considered illegal, and then you ban me and tell me, right, you have to sell your team in, you know what, actually, LCS starts in 2 days in this future scenario. You have to sell your team in 2 days, and then I have to sell this team I bought for 10 million for like 2 million because someone comes in and there's only one person who has the money to buy at the time. Whatever the scenario is, I'm pretty sure that person, again, speculating, allegedly, whatever, I don't know what the fuck you have to say to be safe from this shit, could then take them to court and be like, look, this person's really damaged my earnings and they fucked me in a way that's not legal in the world. I don't know what. I don't think the terms and services of playing League of Legends or entering LCS would probably cover that entirely. I think there would definitely be lawyers who'd be willing to argue that case and could maybe even win it.
Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Scrominati, who in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Hadjou, Mac Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are? Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Scluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.